Welcome to Talking Freemasonry, the Essex Cornerstone podcast. I'm joined this evening by my co-host, Barry Hayward, and our producer, Jack Saunders. Welcome, brethren.
How you doing, Ian? How's things going?
Very well indeed. So for this evening's episode, I thought we'd talk about, we've done some big events as far as the Cornerstone are concerned in the 3 years that I've been involved, but for me, the pinnacle has got to be today, the consecration of our lodge. So I thought, what better things to talk about, and who better to bring on than Primus Master of Essex Cornerstone. So this evening, we've got Elliott Chevin joining us this evening. Welcome, Elliott.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, thank you very much for coming. Before we kick off and delve into the actual lodge itself, would you be okay just sort of, obviously, we know you very well, but give us a little bit of an overview about yourself?
Sure. You know me, I love to talk about myself, Ian. I don't need to be asked twice for that. But yeah, of course, I'll just go back to where it began, which was, I think a lot of us share this story. When I was growing up, I would see my dad go out with my granddad to these meetings with their cases and their black suits, mumbling stuff at each other that I didn't really understand. And they did that for years and years and years, as far back as I could remember. And of course, it piqued my interest when I was a little bit older. I was never asked by my dad if I wanted to join, but when I was 20, I asked him if I could, and he said, yeah, sure, but you need to wait just a little bit longer. He thought maybe kind of 21, 22 was about right. So when I was 23, I had my interview, and that feels just like yesterday. And of course, by the looks of my face, it might look like it was yesterday as well. You're not supposed to laugh. And I had my interview, and I was initiated in September 99. So it's been a while, but quite honestly, it's been a whirlwind. And when you look back on it, you can just see, I can see so much has happened. I've learned so much. I've made so many incredible friends. I think it's made me a better person, a better Freemason, and I think a better employee as well. I mean, I tell that to my boss, but he's not paying me anymore for it. But I think that there's been so many highlights, so many. I'll just pick out a couple before I stop talking. And I'd say the first one is one that my dad recalls, which was going home from the initiation in the car, because he took me home that night, and he said, what do you think? And apparently my response was, do you know what? I think I might really enjoy this. And he just wasn't sure what I was going to say. He thought I probably wouldn't enjoy it for some reason, but there's obviously something about it that's kind of running through our family. As I said, my granddad, my dad, and me, and in fact my sister's joining in a couple of months. And she is intrigued by what we find so intriguing about it ourselves. So that was one. And of course, there have been many, but I think another would be my installation. And a lot of people would probably say the same, not about my installation, but theirs, of course. Going into the chair is something that's incredibly memorable. And then I have to say that I know we're talking about it in a bit, but the Cornerstone Club, starting that with an incredible team, and then the consecration of the lodge also is just another highlight. But honestly, if I thought about it more, I'd probably come up with another 15, 20, 30 things. There are so many highlights, and I've been in it for a while, but I can't really think of anything else that you can belong to that can pique your interest so high for so long continuously. And it really does that, whether you're at home, whether you're abroad, wherever you are, whoever you're with, it's just incredible. And that's why I love it. That's a little bit about my journey, and I hope that gives you a bit of insight.
Absolutely. And it's a great segue, obviously, into the lodge. So I suppose the best place to start is always at the beginning. The idea, where did it come from? Obviously, the club was established, but the formation of the lodge, how did that come into being?
Well, I was surrounded by an incredible team whilst I was part of the Cornerstone Club, and the producer on this podcast will tell you, Jack will tell you, the first time we all went out for dinner and a drink. I mean, I think, Jack, it's fair to say we probably remember some of that night. Is that right? There were a few margaritas, weren't there?
Yeah, I remember the first one. I don't know about the last.
I remember they were frozen margaritas, so they tasted like desserts. And I think we had trouble standing up at the end, but that's a different story. We were the kind of committee, and I think the committee is still the kind of committee that feeds off each other. And there wasn't really a hierarchy. Everyone's thoughts and opinions counted. And I think that's why it worked as well as it did. And I think I'm right in saying it was Jack Gilliland, who's the current chairman, that came up to me and said, do you know, a lot of people are talking about it, and I actually think, Elliott, we should consider starting a lodge. And I said to him, as you'd expect, I said, don't be silly. It's a terrible idea. I think I did say that, actually. And he said, no, seriously, I think it's a good idea. So he spoke to me about it, and eventually I came round to the idea and thought, actually, that is a great idea, because I hadn't quite thought about it in the way that him and others had considered it to be, which is a non-working lodge, as in we don't do degrees, we don't confer degrees on anybody. We have our installation and then another meeting, of course. And there's that, and it gives the younger brethren who are members of the club an opportunity to, or we thought at that point it would give the members of the club, of the lodge, I should say, an opportunity to cut their teeth in offices that they wouldn't necessarily normally be able to carry out in their mother lodge. So we thought, you know what, if we could create a lodge that didn't take anything away from your mother lodge, but actually augmented it or enhanced it, then that's got to be something worth doing. That, and the fact that Essex like to be first, and we thought being the first Young Masons club to consecrate our own lodge feels like a very Essex thing to do. And of course, our dearly departed late Provincial Grand Master Rodney Lister-Bass, who sadly passed away just a few weeks ago, as we know, he was very much a proponent of the idea. So the idea was spawned out of lots of conversations, some yeses, some nos, and more margaritas than you can shake a stick at.
Excellent. I mean, you mentioned we were the first. As far as I know, I think we're the only Young Masons club so far that have actually consecrated their own dedicated lodge. Is that right?
I think that's still the case. There is the Burgoyne Lodge, which is for the Young Masons in London, in Metropolitan Grand Lodge, and they took over a lodge, and they did that quite some time before we consecrated a lodge. So it's a fine line, but we will take it, and we'll say, yes, we were the first to consecrate because we were. Sure, we weren't the first Young Masons lodge, I'll accept that, but we consecrated it first. And as far as I know, we are the only Young Masons club to have done that.
Brilliant. So
I've had a few emails recently from one or two clubs that are looking to consecrate their own New and Young Masons club, and I think that this podcast has come at a fantastic time for them to kind of listen to all the details, the hows and the whys and the hows, and and how we went about that, and just to give them a bit more of a step along the road, which I think they're looking for.
I think it did concern us at the time, isn't it? Like, was we trying to run before we could walk? But I think we'd been on a really good jog of a journey, and sort of after the running through these ideas out loud, it did seem a fantastic idea, and I'm so glad that we did it. It was just such an amazing thing to be a part of. So I think it's great to be a bit ballsy sometimes as a club, and I think if new clubs are listening and they're looking at doing this, then it should probably be encouraged.
Yeah, Jack, the one thing that I've always thought about with regards to Freemasonry, and probably just things in general, is that, you know, if you don't like something, or if you think it can be done better, don't just moan about it and moan and moan and moan. Do something about it. And actually, years ago, before the Young Masons Club existed, I spoke to my assistant provincial Grand Master at the time about the idea of a Young Masons Club. I could quite have easily have just complained about the fact that we didn't have one. But, you know, you fast forward and we, you know, like I say, a few margaritas and conversations and things, and then we had our club formed, and then we thought, you know what, we can push the boundaries, to your point, Jack, even further. And we knew that we were pretty good at organising. And we thought, well, actually, the ultimate piece of organisation has to be creating this lodge in the most memorable, incredible way that we possibly can. It really shines a light on how vibrant and fun and incredible Freemasonry is, to demonstrate that actually, you know what, Freemasonry is flourishing, and its young Masons are really supportive and loving being part of it. So I think that's the essence of this, really. We should push, we should continue to do what we know to be true, what we really believe passionately will work. And that's exactly what we did. And I think, you know, I've now not been part of the club for a few years, and I've been really proud to sit back and just watch how you guys have taken it forwards to levels that I couldn't have even imagined, because quite frankly, we thought before the club started, we might get 30 members, and that would be good. We built it for more, but we never would have expected over 200. Just never would have expected it. So we aimed high. We achieved the lodge, and you guys have continued to do that as well, which is admirable.
Excellent. You mentioned, obviously, there was a good team around you at the time. I know, obviously, Jack and Barry were part of that team, being founders of the lodge. You had John G, Jack G as well. As someone who was part of the committee but not a founder, I could see a lot of people pedaling very, very hard up to the consecration, to put it in a nice way. For those of the people that are listening at the moment, could you talk slightly about the process between sort of the inception to actually making it happen? Because obviously there's a lot more than just putting in a petition. There's a fair bit of work that's gone on behind the scenes to get it from A to B. Yeah,
and it really is involved. And actually, if I was to call out those people who deserve a call out, we would be here longer than the podcast can run for, I think. But there were many, many individuals who worked tirelessly to make it happen. And it actually felt like a provincial event, if I'm honest. And when you have over 700 people in a temple, you can see why. And you have over 500 people dining, it doesn't just happen. But in terms of the process to make it work, I won't talk through necessarily the protocols and the gates to put it through, because those things can change. And if you watch this in 6 months' time, it might be out of date. I will say, though, that the way through it is quite simply to have an idea about what you want to do, and actually to write the aims of the lodge, the mission, the limits and the proportions. What is it you're trying to do and why? But what have you considered that you don't want to do and why? Just so that it's clear that you've taken everything into account. And that's the proposal document, which then the provincial team will look at. So, of course, the provincial Grand Master will look at and decide whether he is happy with that proposal. And from there, it goes through to Grand Lodge, and they will then tell you whether or not they agree, and then they will create it in a Delphi, which is the Grand Lodge database, and then you plan your consecration. And planning consecration is one thing, because of course you've got quite different ritual. You've got the provincial team to come in and do that, and you've got to figure out what the installation is going to look like. But then there's all the other things that you don't even think of, where you need a very robust Google spreadsheets or other good spreadsheets are available, and you can share it where everyone knows what they're doing. But you've got all the financials, and you've got to buy a signing in book, you've got to buy the furniture, the aprons, you've got to decide what ritual you're going to do. I mean, you're going to do thematic, sorry, I'm talking Royal Arch there. You're going to do Taylors, you're going to do emulation, you're going to do West End, you're going to do, what is it you're going to do? How are you going to figure that piece out? And then, of course, the founders and the officers, and then you've got to, of course, get the GP committee, the founding committee, to agree on how it's all going to work. So there are lots of things, but the most important thing is that you have a great team where there's no politics, who have all the information they need and great communication with the province. And we were lucky to have that. And I'm pretty sure that if anyone wants to use the project plan that we used, we'd be more than happy to share it. We've done a lot of the hard work. I'm sure it wasn't perfect, and things can always be better, but we will share whatever we've created with anybody that wants it for their benefit, so they haven't got to start all over again.
That's awesome. So fast forwarding to sort of consecration day, you mentioned 700 plus in the temple. I was there for the meeting. I think you guys were all inside getting drilled at the time, but I was outside soaking up the ambience. Great Queen Street was littered with young masons. It was actually electric being outside at the time. You guys probably didn't get to appreciate it the same way I did. What was the atmosphere like for you guys? Because obviously you've got the big boys coming down, you got to perform, you got to do the work, the emotion of it. Talk me through that.
Well, we were there. Please, Barry.
Sorry, I was going to say, just for me, it felt like an equivalent of a wedding day. If I'm honest, it just felt, you were nervous. You're waiting for this big ceremony to start. Something you've planned for, something you've rehearsed for, something you've paid for, and you're just, obviously it's all anticipation. It's just building, and the temple's filling up. You've got people running around. Where's this? Where's that? And you know that there's loads of people outside ready to come in, and you just wanted to grab onto something because it was just flying by so quickly. We were there early, and then next minute, I know me and Jack, we went to Greg's, didn't we? We grabbed some lunch, and we quickly run back, and then by the end of it, it was almost over. It was onto the festive ball. It just went really quickly. But for me, it was amazing inside. I do wish I was outside more. I'm sure it was fantastic in the pubs opposite.
I think we was really hard on ourselves on the day because we just wanted everything to be perfect and amazing, and to us every little minute detail was such a massive thing, and we wanted to make sure it was right. And then just on the day, like, people were just so happy with it. But it was stressful. It was one of the most stressful things I've ever done, but so enjoyable. At the end of the day, looking at it and seeing everyone enjoying themselves, and it was nice when they were sort of obviously congratulating us and wishing us all the success. But just to enjoy it at the end, it was like that wedding reception at the end where you can just finally, all the hard work's done. You just relax and enjoy yourself then.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it was quite emotional, and seeing brethren, young masons from all across the Constitution coming along to support us was just spectacular, and it was so generous of them to give up their time to come and see a consecration that, quite frankly, they weren't allowed to be part of because they couldn't see the actual consecration unless they were a master mason, because of course we open in the third. So that was a challenge, but nonetheless, we still had so many young masons come and support us, and we really thank them for that. What was also interesting, of course, was when we move up to the higher degrees, and then we have to ask those who aren't able to see it to retire from the lodge. I don't think anyone's ever seen a view where you have 300 Freemasons walk out because of that.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to be sitting next to the assistant Grand Master, Sir David Hugh Wotton, and he turned to me and said, it's not that I've never seen that before, Elliot, it's that I don't think it's ever been seen before. It was that kind of buzz, that kind of event. We knew that something special was happening, and it wasn't because of us, it was because of everybody. It was because of the entirety of the situation. But quite frankly, Ian, seeing your own lodge quite literally being formed out of oil, corn, salt and wine is, and investing the first officers ever and seeing the smiles on their faces is something that you can't quite put your finger on. It's, it is a sort of magical, memorable, unique kind of experience. And as Barry said, it did go very quickly. One of the things I said to the gang was, try and find a moment or two where you remember this, Jack, he's nodding away, where you just actually stand back for a minute and just take it all in. And that's the bit you're going to remember the most, seeing it all, seeing that snapshot in your mind. And I think we did that. I think we were able to do that. And I think probably I will just highlight, if you don't mind, just a couple of other standout moments for me. One was when, just a personal moment, when the provincial team left the temple and I had to close the lodge, and I stood up and was able to deliver some ritual in front of then probably about 600 or so people, was far less nerve-wracking than I thought it would be. It was quite odd, if I'm honest. So that was just one moment I'll always remember. And then the other one was when I'd finished doing my response to the master at the festive board. I sat down and I had the biggest glass of wine I think I've ever had in my life. And there was a big sigh of relief, because as Jack quite rightly said, it's pretty full on, to say the least.
I mean, you say 600. The numbers I got was actually closer to 7, which I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that actually was the largest private meeting that an Essex Lodge has had.
Yeah, so it was over 700, Ian, and so yes, it was then therefore the largest private lodge meeting that Essex has ever had. However, the provincial team left after the consecration and before we closed the lodge. Right. So there were quite a few of them that left. So there were around about maybe 650 or so that were left. But it was a spectacular number. And actually, we were thinking at the beginning, should we really have hired this temple? Are we really going to get more than 100 people at this meeting? Should we have gone to the Egyptian Room or to Saxon Hall in Southend to have this meeting? But as we said a few minutes ago, we were overwhelmed by the support.
I mean, it's kudos to the team that you guys were able to fill the Grand Temple pretty much. The bottom level was chocker. How much did social media play a part in getting the message out there? Because I know I saw it out there a lot with regards to the Young Masons clubs were all talking about it. It was all over Twitter.
I think Jack is, and Barry, I think potentially as well, but Jack was a huge proponent of the social media campaign, right, Jack?
Yeah, it was just a case of we've built it, so we've got to do it now. Like we've drawn our line in the sand, and it's quite a long way away. So we need to fill it. So we had lots of great ideas, lots of ways of trying to engage other clubs to come and join us for the day. So it was a massive part, and it really did help share it. And thank you to all those that shared the meeting details and came and told other people about it. It really helped us fill the room and make it a great day.
It was so great to see. I was going to say, it's so great to see all the representation from the other Young Masons clubs as well. The New and Young Masons clubs up and down UGLE, they're all represented there. It was awesome.
I think the New and Young Masons Club network is just fantastic in getting us all together, and not just getting new and young Masons within the province together, which is what our clubs are doing, but the network is getting new and young Masons from across the country and the Constitution, and even across constitutions as we go and visit clubs in Ireland and Scotland. And it's just great to know that there's other people out there that love their Freemasonry like we do as well.
I think the relentless focus of the social media campaign helped, but when I say relentless focus, with an eye for sensitivity, because I think when we started our club, we probably overdid the amount of messaging that we sent out, and then we pulled it right back so that we weren't pestering. We found the balance, but we did it in a way for the consecration that worked. And then the other, you know, whilst we're talking about relentless focus, I should mention John Glynn, who was our founding treasurer, and was relentlessly focused on, imagine a situation where you've just spent thousands of pounds renting the Grand Temple and you haven't got any money. And imagine how he felt, because he had a big dinner to pay for too, and he didn't, and we had 30 people that said yes. So there was, you know, he was very headstrong, and, you know, we broke even, and that was all we wanted to do, you know, and people were asking us why we were even charging to come along if you just went to the temple, because unlike a provincial meeting, there were no provincial fees to buffer this. You know, John had to get this in to make it work, and he did. Kudos to him. And kudos to our secretary, of course, Jack, who is a bit of an unsung hero in this, I must say, because, you know, the secretary is the one. I mean, we all know the difference between a secretary and a DC, or at least in my mind, I believe that the secretary essentially prepares for everything before the meeting happens. And then when the meeting happens, it's in the hands of the DC. So the secretary does everything up to the meeting, and then the DC, and of course our founding DC, James Tyrrell, who did a cracking job. I mean, standing up in front of all those people, making sure everyone was where they needed to be. Straight after the provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies does his job is remarkable. But just going back to Jack, really pushing the boundaries as secretary and unpicking every bylaw, every word, dot, dash, and at the same time getting over 500 people at the festive ball to play drums on their tables was just insane. And again, actually, when we were, you remember we were doing the drumming on the tables, Sir David Hugh Wotton turned around to me and he said, we were banging on the table, he said, Elliott, he said, I don't know what degree this is, but it's wonderful. And I know I went off tangent, so I should make an apology for it, but there's just so many rich stories that came out of that day.
It worked perfectly, because the next question I was going to ask you was about the festive board. Because I don't know of any festive board that was, you know, up to 600 almost, and it wasn't a normal festive board. You had the drum waiters. There's so much going on there. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Well, yeah. So I'll start with the drum waiters, who actually, that was the last thing to come on, where, you know, we'd done a lot, and the festive ball was pretty full chock-a-block of things, and I'll give you a quick highlight. But at the end of it, there were some waiters that were pouring some coffees, and then they just started banging some plates. And actually, they'd worked on making sure that the uniform they were wearing was the same as the waiters that work there. And the funny thing is that the waiters that work there don't really know each other, because they're all contracted and they don't know. So the look on their faces when they saw who they thought were their colleagues banging the plates and the tables was priceless. But the best bit really was that they handed out these plastic tubes, and the first third of the room had red tubes, the middle blue tubes, and then yellow tubes on the right. And then these drummers were incredible and doing their thing, and you can look on Twitter and see that. But then, of course, the head drummer was on the stage, and he was conducting us. And of course, he was making music with us. When he points to the left, the red ones are one color, the yellow ones are another color, the red ones are one sound, the yellow ones are another sound, the blue ones are another sound. So it turned into some incredible drum crescendo, and it was a way to get, how else can you get 500 people, a huge festive board, feeling as one, communicating together. And I can't think of another way, really. And I will also add, and I'll add it because if I don't, I'll get a call afterwards, that I was against the idea of the drummers. And I think there were some of us, Jack, that were as well, right? Some others in the team that were. But I'm just really pleased, like I said, that I just listened to everyone else on that, and they did it anyway. And that was the right thing to do. But Jack, do you remember that? We were trying to think of what else we could do so we could make it even more interesting. And that one, people weren't so sure on, were they?
I think that we was looking at lots of sort of different after dinner entertainment, and you just never know how things are going to be perceived. And obviously as a club, we like to push the boundaries and like you say, find out where we can just progress things a little bit further, but also be tasteful and within the limits of it. And there was such a vast array of people from countries, ages, places, levels of Freemasonry, that we wanted to try and appeal and be respectful to all. And you just never know, but we're so glad we did, because it was fantastic and everybody joined in and everybody found it entertaining.
And then,
we had lots of different sorry, I think I got a bit of feedback on these. I think we had lots of ideas. We settled on, I think you might be talking about the singer that we had for the master song. She was incredible. We had the trumpeters bringing us into the festive board. We had that video wall as well, where our pictures would eventually kind of make a Cornerstone logo at the end. But and they were some of the great ideas we had. We had other ideas that didn't make it, like a vodka luge ice sculpture. That never made it, unfortunately. That would have been fantastic.
I was going to ask you actually, Barry, to talk about the lady that came in and sang a cappella the master song, and how I think people were almost wiping their eyes. It was such an emotional song, right? And I think you kind of brought her in, made her feel comfortable, and you were obviously chatting with her before, and she didn't appear nervous, did she? But it was the first time she'd really stood up and sung that without having the words in front of her.
If you're not a Freemason as well, like, you probably would never have heard of the song. So having to sort of discover a song for the first time, I suppose is difficult for her, and we find it hard enough to get to grips with it sometimes as well.
Yeah, and then the string quartet, and with the trumpeters, they did a bit of a duo, the trumpeters, but the string quartet were playing modern music. So I think we had one of the songs we had was Game of Thrones, and many others. I can't even remember what they were now, but it was great fun. And yeah, as you mentioned, Barry, the logo at the end on the big screen, made up of everyone's photos from the festive board, just capped it off. But do you know what? That was also just one of those moments where you look around and it didn't really matter who you were, what age you were, or anything else. Everyone was smiling or laughing. And that was what we wanted. We just wanted to create an opportunity where everyone could just have a really great celebration. And we loved the fact that we could just try something a little bit different. And that's what works, because, it does bug me that up and down the country, there are some lodges who are just not doing so well, and they're wondering why. And they've just not really stopped to think about what they could do to just make things a little bit better, a little bit more attractive, and a little bit different. And it's not that tough. It just takes a bit of conversation, a little bit of work, a little bit of focus, and then you can really turn it around. And I think that proved it.
One thing you mentioned earlier was obviously the fact that the Cornerstone Lodge is a non-working lodge. So we don't do your traditional degrees as you would normally do, which obviously puts another focus on the fact that we have to find other things to make our meetings interesting. What kind of things have we done to date, or are we looking at doing in the future, as a replacement for those sort of degree meetings that we would normally do?
Let me turn that over to the guys, because you guys have been at these meetings.
I think before we sort of look at the future meetings, it's important to just talk about sort of the raison d'etre of the lodge in the first place. The reason why we put it together was to help members and past members to stay attached to the club.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Essex, we are a young Masons club, or preliminarily a young and new Masons club. So our cut-off age is 40. So past 40, you are no longer eligible to be a member of the Cornerstone Club. So one of the reasons for the lodge is so that past members could retain their connection to the club, really, and that was important, because we was finding that people didn't want to leave. Like, they've had such a great experience and joining in and meeting with new people that they didn't necessarily want to lose that because of their age. So the lodge is available for past members of the club to join, so that they can keep in contact with the club and the members and still feel a part of it. So I think even going forward, without having anything necessarily special about the meeting, it's special in a way because the new and past members are coming together and enjoying that friendship as well.
But what about the Bavarian night?
I was about to say, we've still had some good nights.
Well, that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if Barry wants to cover that.
Yeah, so I think so what we've continued to do with the lodge moving forward in its kind of normality, I guess, after the Grand Lodge, is our lodge meetings are held at Upminster, and obviously they are extremely well attended, a very vibrant lodge, but our festive boards have continued in the same vein as those that we held after the consecration. We've had we will continue to have some incredible festive boards. The Bavarian night that Elliott just spoke about was quite amazing. We had an Olympia band. We had lots of decoration in the dining room, and they always end up with free beer for some reason, which I'm not complaining about, but it seems to be our thing right now. It's a free beer at a Cornerstone meeting. So they seem quite legendary at the moment. So I think we've set the bar quite high, and we will continue to try and push that. I don't think we'll ever have a normal festive board at the Cornerstone Lodge.
I think
right.
Was it Jack that said we had 10 members waiting to come in as joining members as well once we come back on?
Yeah.
It speaks volume. I mean, everyone that joins our lodge has their own mother lodge, but as a second lodge where young Masons can get together and have fun and just have that connection.
It's magical, and we're also trying to push the boundaries at all these meetings. And the Bavarian night was one thing where we had the live band and it was great fun. But of course, the other thing we did was, one of our meetings was a live video link to the Grand Lodge of California, and Mike Ramos, who is now the new lodge development officer for the Grand Lodge of California. That's his full-time job now, but he's actually a member of the Cornerstone and founder of the Cornerstone Lodge. And so we had a live video link with him and his colleague, and it was fantastic. And it was all about how they're reviving young Freemasonry in California. And then, of course, we moved to the festive board, where we had just one big, incredible American-style festive board. And with, again, as you said, Barry, just lots of free beer. So we do like unlimited jugs of beer, and it was just great fun. And that's the thing. So I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the master each year to come up with the idea for his year, and then we bring that to the committee and everybody votes on it. But the only problem that we have is just that we've got too many ideas. So we're going to be busy and having fun for a long, long time to come. And I'd say that if anyone's listening to this and is interested in a visit to the Cornerstone Lodge, then they should get in touch, because we'd love to see them. I think we play pretty good hosts.
Yeah, absolutely. And the contact details for the lodge and club are going to come up at the end of this, so definitely get in contact. So we spoke about the consecration. With regards to the next step for the lodge, I don't know who the best person to ask about this is. I know obviously Elliott has a role in chapter, but we're currently in the position where we're looking at the 4th regular step for Essex Cornerstone Lodge, and starting our own chapter. Jack, do you want to tell us about that, or Barry? Probably better speak about it.
Well, we've the idea was floated around between a lot of members and put forward to the committee, and obviously we loved the idea as well. Not so much the idea of all the work coming, but it's worth it in the end, isn't it? So we've actually written our proposal to form our own Essex Cornerstone chapter associated to the lodge, and we've put that proposition forward to the province in a letter. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking for people that are interested in being founding members of the chapter, if they're already a member of the Holy Royal Arch, or if they would be interested in becoming a companion once the chapter is formed. So if you're listening to this and you are interested in being a founder of the chapter, please get in touch using any of the website, the social media, reaching out to us however you can. The details are on the website with some frequently asked questions as well, so you can check out for more information. A lot of the actual details are a bit sketchy at the moment. If you are interested, just put your name down. It's not a legally binding contract, so if your decision has to change over the future, it's just an expression of interest at the moment. But if you saw what the consecration and the lodge has been like, I'm sure you'll definitely want to be a part of the chapter as we go forward.
Excellent. It's going to be a great way, I think, of breathing a bit of youth into chapter as well. If you look at the stats, it's a great order, but it doesn't have a lot of youth in it at the moment. It's going to be brilliant. So
I think the lodge was a lot of hard work, but as Elliott said, if you've got a great team with you, many hands make light work, and it was completely worth it in the end. But I think it's important to sort of look at the other options that are available as well. I know it may sound like a lot of work to some people, but would like to have the same outcome in the end of having their own lodge for their clubs. So one of the options that we looked at was repurposing a lodge that already exists, that may not be as successful as it had been before. So it would be a great idea for other clubs to look at repurposing lodges in their area for new and young Masons. You can still have big rededication ceremonies and all of the extras like we provided. Not necessarily not as hard work. I'm sure it's still, there's a lot involved in it and a lot that comes with it, but at the end of the day, the outcome is still going to be the same. It's still going to be encouraging club members, new and young Masons, to enjoy their Freemasonry. So I would suggest looking down that route as well.
excellent, brilliant. Well, Elliott, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about the consecration, everything leading up to it. It sounds like a lot of hard work, but from my point of view, watching it, it was certainly worth it. I know if there are other clubs that are looking at doing the same as what we did, there's a whole plethora of people that are willing to offer their assistance and support and advice in a brotherly fashion. So with that, I'll hand over to Jack with the news.
The Museum of Freemasonry, based at Freemasons Hall, Great Queen Street, London, is delighted to announce that it has been able to once again open its doors and welcome visitors. Pre-booking is required, and visitors will be subject to the usual checks and requirements as per government and public health guidelines. So it's great to see Freemasonry Museum opening again. I've been there a couple of times. I know it's fantastic, and people have really been wanting to get in there and have a look again, especially some of the new initiated Masons just before the lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, bearing in mind we've had a long close down period as well, any petitioners that are currently waiting in the wings, now's a good time to sort of get them interested again and take them back to GQS and just sort of show them around. I mentioned in the last episode we did about the fact that I took a friend of mine on the tour of Freemasons Hall, and we did the Bejeweled exhibition. And I think that all of that just added to the experience of getting him interested in Masonry. It's a great thing.
A revamped version of the Essex Provincial website and its online resource, The Cube, are now available. The Cube is a members-only website for use by Freemasons subscribing to Essex lodges. The new and improved look and feel to both will be more interactive and make locating files, documentation, and lodge and chapter meetings easier than ever.
So I had a nosy around today on the new look, and I'm liking it a lot more than the old one. I think the old one was trying to do a lot, and it was trying to be a bit of a Masonic Facebook as well, and I think it lost its focus. And I think the new version is a lot more streamlined and just, you know, I mean, we've got social media that does that, and it does it well. But what this is doing now is a lot more targeted.
Got a new team that are looking after the communications structure now, communication strategy, and of course Barry is part of that, the social media communications officer, which is why social media is looking as fresh as it is. Peter Lowe is heading up the comms strategy, and he has very quickly, along with a team of course behind him, pulled together the new Cube. And I think it's fair to say that the updated Cube and the public facing websites are structurally pretty sound, but just wait and see what happens over the next few weeks and months. They're going to get even better. They're going to stay within their limits and proportions, but they're just going to be even better. So I'm pleased. Thanks, Ian, for your feedback on that. And it will get better.
So you can find out about all our membership pack details and details of the passport, about the lodge, about the chapter. Everything's available at www.essexcornerstone.com. We've got a Facebook page, Facebook at Essex Cornerstone Club. You can find us on Twitter at Young Masons Club. We're on Instagram as well. Got some great graphics up there at Essex Cornerstone Club as well.
Brilliant. Brethren, thanks again for joining us this evening. I've really enjoyed tonight's episode. I'm looking forward to next week. Take care.
Goodbye.